Students sometimes ask me, how long should my part one answer be? I have a fairly simple answer. I say, answer the question and explain your answer. So, answer the question means yes, I do, no, I don't, something like that. And then explain it because da 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 da, and also da 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 da. So I say part one answers should be 1, 2, or 3 sentences. If it's one sentence, maybe you need a complex sentence, not just a short one. Now, this answer is for people who want to make a 6 or a 7. If you want a 5, I don't care how you answer, but for a 6 and especially for a 7 or higher, answer the question and explain the answer. Now, if you give a really long answer, some examiners will interrupt you. They'll stop you because long answers are not necessary. It kind of depends on the personality of the examiner. Maybe not personality, maybe personality. I never interrupted people when I was an examiner, and now that I give mock exams on iTalki, you can find me on iTalki. Now that I give mock exams, a little plug there. Now that I give mock exams, I still seldom interrupt my students when I'm giving them a mock exam. I don't think it's polite. And part one is supposed to help you feel relaxed. And you don't feel relaxed if an examiner is interrupting you, in my opinion. However, other examiners do interrupt people in part one if their answer is too long. I heard a teacher one time say he teaches his students to answer the question, explain the answer, and give an example. Now, that sounds good, but the problem with that is if you give an example, your answer might be too long. So I think give an example is good advice for part three. I'm not sure that it's good advice for part one. I don't give that advice. Okay, so how do you answer part one questions? First of all, don't try to impress the examiner. They're not going to be impressed. They just want to ask questions and hear answers, and then ask another question and hear answers. They also know that you have the topics and that you can memorize answers or great vocabulary. I don't recommend spending a lot of time on part one, and I don't recommend learning great vocabulary for part one. Again, I saw another teacher somewhere recommend, oh, you should spend some time learning really good vocabulary for part one. My advice is the opposite. Don't spend time on vocabulary for part one. The examiners know that you can prepare. They're not impressed. They're impressed with great vocabulary in part three, especially if they ask a question that they made up and they know that you know how to use these words, not that you memorized the answer in part one or for part two. Okay, that was a short question with a long answer. I do that every time. I know I do like to talk a little bit, but how do you answer part one? My suggestion, answer the question, yes, I have, and explain the answer. One time I da 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 da. 2 or 3 sentences, maybe one long sentence. That's it. Thanks for listening.